start that. I just see. Oh yeah, perfect. Yeah, Simona just said might not be able to follow the whole session, so will it be recorded? So there we go, it will be recorded. Sort that out. Perfect. Right. Well, are you guys ready to get started? And then more people might trickle in, but Stuart, if you're all good to get going. So welcome everyone. I think most people here know about ASP already, but my name is Julia Sansom. I'm a director at ASP, as is my mum on the call here, Teresa Sansom. And ASP, we always aim to connect, challenge, and support all the sustainability practitioners as we learn to move together from unsustainable to sustainable practices. And that kind of includes creating learning events and opportunities like this online and in person. So without further ado, I'll hand over to the brilliant Stuart Kerslake.
Thank you. I'm going to pin myself for the purposes of the recording, because then as well, we won't, if other people don't know, maybe that you're up the top there anyway, by the looks of it. Brilliant. Thanks for that, Julia. So I'm going to, I'm just going to share my screen, and I've got a little presentation here, but I really don't want this to be, kind of death by slides or whatever. And I like make it very experiential. So as I say, grab something to make some notes on, but also I just invite you to ask you questions as you go. If you want to put them in the chat, then Julia can she's looking after that for me, which would be fabulous. But otherwise, feel free to just call them out as we go. So welcome, thank you for coming and spending some of your evening with me. It's a presentation around talent dynamics, and as you can see there, I'm Stuart Kerslake. I'm a flow coach at Being in Business. Being in Business is the name of my business, and part of that is about who are you being in your business, and how, bringing your being into your business. And I found this tool when I first ran into this tool. I was an accountant and had just started self-employment. I'd been an accountant in industry, and then I made the mistake for me of becoming an accountant in practice, doing tax returns and accounts and stuff, which, as we'll discover, was not me in my flow, particularly. So, but I discovered this model, and everything opened out for me from that point, because it just made sense of the world for me. Even, well, I'll probably share it in context, but even how I'd managed to spend 30 years as an accountant became obvious. It's a bit like Steve Jobs at that, connecting the dots, looking backwards. You sometimes can't see things until you're in it. So this was a hugely insightful tool for me to discover, and then I've used it ever since with my clients. So I'm also the city leader for Genius U. Genius U is the organization that hosts, Roger created Wealth Dynamics. And recently I did an event there, and I was getting the attendee list out, and some of the people, I think it was like 2.4 million, that was their ID on the system, and mine was 4,612. So that's how long I've been related to the organization. 2006 is when I first discovered this. So that's a little bit about me. Now I'm going to probably struggle to move this through its presentation. I will get better at these things. So I describe myself as a coach and a mentor, and as I say, I'm an ex-accountant. And the reason why I wanted to do this presentation in this community is that this, if you set aside family and hobbies and all the rest of it, these are the three things that really light me up. So enterprise and business, there was a reason why I became an accountant. And the number of times I've tried to chuck, that particular baby out with the bathwater and it's just washed straight back in again, is I really believe that enterprise, in its widest sense, so entrepreneurship, will ultimately save the planet. And I'll tell a little story in a minute about that. And then spirit and soul, the inner work. I personally believe that, we are all beings having a human experience of our beingness. And that might be a little out there, but really knowing that we are connected to everything. And then finally, nature and water, and what a beautiful way of remembering that we are connected to everything, particularly through the metaphor of water. There is only one body of water, and some of it's flowing through you, and some of it's over here behind me, and some of it is in the rain. It's just a one body of water on this planet. And if you think of it in those terms, it's a fabulous metaphor for connectedness and oneness. So if you overlap all of those, and apologies, I have no idea how to do this any other way. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get much slicker at this. So right at the core of that is some social entrepreneurs. And what I mean by social entrepreneurs is any venture, any enterprise with a social or societal outcome. It doesn't have to be a social enterprise or a CIC or any of those. Those are great structures for how we do entrepreneurship, is the way I would describe it. And I'm quite a fan of for-profit. I was blessed to meet Muhammad Yunus, who was the grandfather of kind of microfinance and 2006 Nobel Peace Prize winner. And he has this concept of social business. So it's for-profit, competing with other organizations, but this for a social or societal outcome. So for-profit non-distribution is often the way he describes that. And so that, as I say, that's just a little bit about me. And this is why this particular community is so resonant for me, because everybody in this community is what I would describe as a social entrepreneur. They may be enterprising in a role, for another organization. They won't necessarily be running their own company, but the societal social aspect is hugely important to you guys, and you are enterprising in the way that you approach that. So this is why, as I say, I wanted to do this presentation because it's just so resonant to me in this community. And so why personality profiling? Because that's what talent dynamics is. And I love this quote by Karl Jung, and the model we're about to see is a Jungian model. It was developed from the principles that Karl Jung established. If anyone wants to, feel free to unmute and speak. But have you used any other personality profiling, any of you? Is that a thumbs up from Julia? So what did you use?
Well, I've done a few ones, but I've done obviously MBTI is quite a popular one, I guess. And then the one that I've forgotten the name of, I'll try to remember it in a second. But you get there's 8 different types or 9 different types, and I've completely forgotten what that one's called. Let me look it up and I'll get back to you on that. But I've done quite a few.
Well, thank you for sharing. There's DISC and Belbin and Myers-Briggs, which is the MBTI one. And they're all fabulous at helping you understand yourself better, in helping you understand other people better so that you can communicate more effectively with them. But Carl Jung actually, a lot of his work is around consciousness. He was a protege of Freud until they went their own way. And he has this sense of the collective unconscious and various other things around that. But he also had the I Ching, the ancient Chinese kind of book of rules almost, translated into German, the first European language. And what Roger Hamilton has done within Talent Dynamics and its sister program, Wealth Dynamics, is to bring that ancient wisdom to play in it. So as we'll see in a minute, rather than just being the quadrants or the 8s or the 16s, as Julia was describing, of the other personality profiles out there, this one, not only is it 5 rather than 4, but there is this sense of seasonality and cycle. So I just wanted to own those roots. And I love this expression by Jung, which is, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So all the while that you're not conscious of what's going on for you, it's still running there in the background. But you might just call it fate. And so talent dynamics, wealth dynamics can be a beautiful way to see the fire, the flow, the best of our personality. Because it's not about putting us in a box. It's just saying, okay, this is what I do well, and these are the things that maybe I do less well. And then, of course, we can also, if we choose to, look at our shadow side, and I use a fabulous tool called the Enneagram for that as well, see what's going on in our shadow. But I just wanted to, to put that out there, because we're all here on a mission, or that's my sense of it. The ASP, we're on a mission to make the planet a better place. And part of that is about raising the consciousness, the awareness of our fellow humans, many of whom are in this space of unconsciousness. And I know that there's a lot of climate anxiety out there, and people are starting to get a little triggered by AI and these kinds of things. And that's wholly human and understandable. But when we're aware of that, we then have some choice as to how much we attach to it and how much we lean into our gifts, our strengths, etc. So that was really why I wanted to put that slide in here. So this is, go on. Yeah, sorry, Julie.
I was just going to say, I think Nora put it in the chat as well. If it works for you, the next slide, you can just press your arrow buttons on your thing. But I just thought, I don't know if it'll work for your one.
Oh, yay.
But I just thought I saw Nora's thing.
Thank
so
you.
Sorry, continue.
No, brilliant. Thank you so much for that. So this is the model that I really want to focus on today. And hopefully you'll see why I believe it's a valuable and insightful tool. So we have the 4 quadrants that comes out in many of the other Jungian models: 4 colors, disc, Belbin, they tend to work with 4s. Myers-Briggs is 16. And they all come, for those of you who've seen the report, on the kind of back page of that, it does set out the 64 pentagrams of the I Ching and what they refer to. And Roger's condensed that down to 4. Can you see my cursor? Or do I need a pointer? No, probably not. You see my cursor? Oh, good, thank you. So you've got these 4 quadrants here. They happen to be triangular quadrants in this model, but you've got the 4 quadrants there. And those will mirror the other personality types. And then we've got the 8 profiles coming around. Now, these are all profiles related to how you're best in flow. And we're going to come on to each of those. But you'll notice that the 4 quadrants also have a name, an element, one of the ancient elements, Chinese, I think, and a season. And this is what makes this model quite different from the other ones, because the spring energy, the wood energy of the dynamo quadrant is where it all starts. It starts with a big idea. It starts with new beginnings. And then you move around into fire and you start to engage some people in this big idea, which is the blaze. And then you start to do things, you know, you put some seeds in, and you actually grow some crops. And in business, this might be your products, your services, or the things that you're offering to people. And that happens in tempo. In autumn, we can harvest that. And then we move on to the steel, which is winter. It doesn't have to be cold. It's just the final stage in the cycle, where we start to put in systems and structures and measurement. So if we start then with at 12 o'clock with the creator, I notice a number of you. I think we've got two creators in the room, not necessarily in the room, but out of the people who took their tests. Is there anyone here a creator and prepared to admit it? Yay, Julia. So
Yes.
yes, there's that. Oh, Jacqueline, hello. So how did that land for either of you two, that profile of creator?
Yeah, I think for me, I don't know, I was kind of not super surprised, but I thought that might be maybe like a secondary one for me. But I think when I was kind of reading through, it kind of felt right, because when I was doing the test, obviously I just kind of went with what my intuition, what my gut was saying for the answers. So I thought maybe I would be more like a supporter or something, but actually, so I was fairly happy, I think, with creator.
Creator. So this is the thank you. Jacqueline, do you want to add anything, or the creator?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I'm out in the car, so I can't put my camera on. It'll be all black. I resonated completely, 2000%, when the result came out, because it made sense. That is exactly who I am. I'm so helicopter view. I never get into detail. And yes, I agreed with everything that I saw in the report.
Brilliant. Thank you. So yes, as Jacqueline says, this is the realm of the big picture. This is about innovation. It's where things start. It's that new beginning, that spring energy, the wood energy. And then you'll notice a number of these profiles are on the corners, and that so the star is both that big picture dynamo energy and starting to be the people energy of Blaze. Blaze is all about people. And so a star, so a creator, a good example of creator would be someone like Steve Jobs or even Richard Branson. A lot of people think Richard Branson is a star, right? Because of the antics that he gets up to. But Richard Branson's whole philosophy, the Virgin philosophy, is bring innovation to established businesses or established industries and really flip them around. So a star, and one of my favorite examples of star is Oprah Winfrey, which is like bringing people to her personal brand to then shine a light on her interviewee or on the book that she's promoting or something of that nature. So do we have any stars in the house? I know one of them came back as one of the reports came back as a star. Any stars in the house? I can't see you all at the minute. Feel free.
I think so, but I couldn't. I've only had a quick chance to look at it, so I'm. Oh yeah, a primary profile. Yes, star.
There you go. Fantastic. So.
And then creator and supporter. Second. Yeah. I have no idea what that means.
No worries. And actually, interestingly enough, as we'll come further around the profile, the further we come around this cycle, the more likely people are to have actually read the report, because you probably just want the highlights and the big picture from this space of dynamo. Thank you, Sarah. So yeah, then we come on to supporter, and originally Roger, who created this model, called that role leader, and then we realized, of course, you can actually be a leader from any of these profiles. But these are the people who lead teams. These are the people who galvanize teams around them. So where the stars might be about inspiration, supporters are about motivation. And often people, in a personal capacity in supporter, They love the buzz and the energy. That's why it's fire energy. You know, if they're not talking to people, they're not in their flow. And while we're on that, I guess we could include that. So Dynamo people tend to be visual in their learning style. And Blaze people tend to be auditory. And a little tip, if you're trying to work out what somebody is, at least in terms of the four elements, if someone says something like, "Oh, I see," or "I hear you," that can often be a clue. You know, "I hear you" is a Blaze type expression. "Oh, I see" is either a Dynamo one or potentially a Steel one, because what they're really saying is "I understand." So then we move on down to the deal maker, and the deal maker is all about that bottom line. The tempo is all about the right something, and in this case it's the right person. So the deal maker just knows exactly who to connect with. For a long while I thought it was a deal maker. I was playing a deal maker game when I used to go out networking in networking groups, and I couldn't understand why the people I put together nothing ever happened with it and all the rest of it. And it's because this is not my natural flow. You know, it was either the wrong person at the right time or the right person, you know, they weren't the right people. I'm a star, by the way. I should have probably acknowledged that earlier. So, but from my star, I can inspire people and they can make their connections as they wish. But that's not really my forte. So I think, do we have any supporters in the room? I know we did have a profile or two that was supporter. No. Deal maker? Any deal makers? I believe we had someone did have a profile with deal maker, and I appreciate that not all of us are in business. Many of us not in business, but deal makers are the kind of holy grail to connect with in business, because there's relatively few of them. And that the reason behind that is that they're often called the peacemaker as well, or the peacekeeper. So you find that doctors, nurses, you know, emergency services people, negotiators tend to be deal makers. So they're often of service and not necessarily in business. Fabulous people to have in your camp, as is everyone, I think. So now, carrying on this theme of the right thing to do, tempo is all about timing, and it's very sensory. So this is the space of kinesthetic learning. You know, it's like literally touching, feeling it. Very grounded, unlike the helicopter view of Dynamo. And the trader's right in the middle of there. So the traders have a sense of the right time. They're very good with a sense of timing. And often traders can be the best customer service people, customer support people. Unlike the star, who's comfortable initiating conversations and having new conversations with people and are quite good at marketing and sales, traders are really good at keeping your customers happy, keeping your clients happy, keeping the teams happy. And often a lot of the value in the business comes from that. And then the accumulators, they're about knowing the right thing to do. Often the realm of accountants, bookkeepers. You can project manage from any of these, but often project managers are there, PAs and VAs. Just know the right thing to do. And they're keeping count to an extent as well. I think do you have an accumulator in the room or a trader? And if so, would you like to share?
I'm an accumulator, apparently.
Oh, brilliant, Simon. Well, there you go. So you're on the cusp of that sense of timing and the tempo and the kind of detail grounded energy, and the steel, which is about, you know, putting the structure together for this. So I don't know, how did that resonate with you, if you've had a chance to look at it?
I haven't had much of a chance to look at it yet because I sort of did it at the beginning of the call. But yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with a lot of it. I wouldn't say I'm the world's best timekeeper, but
Right.
certainly on the other aspects, like, you know, detail and getting bogged down and not being able to make decisions until I've got enough detail, or then I definitely resonate with that. So yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. And accumulators, I spent, this is where the accountant comes in, I spent 30 odd years in that, arguably in that realm of the accumulator. And when I first started out, that's the role that I was doing. And now I understand why it felt so uncomfortable and out of flow for me as a start, and it's diametrically opposite. However, the more senior I became as an accountant in industry, so I became the CFO and the head of finance, it was all about strategy, dynamo, and then finding fabulous people to implement it, Blaze. So again, I became more and more in flow in my work life as the role that I did more closely aligned with my star profile. That makes sense? Fabulous. And then, as I say, you'll see down the middle there's an introvert extrovert line going on here. And really all that means in the context of this model is, do you function better on your own or in small groups, or do you function better around other people? In fact, you know, do you need people to bounce ideas off and to actually be your most effective? So you know, the steel is not cold, it just happens to be the last one in the season. It's the finishing of a cycle. And people with steel energy can be just as personable as anybody else. It's just that they do it in a more introverted way. And so the Lord is in the middle of this, and this is all about structure, systems, measurement. And the Lords are the kind of the maximizers, looking to get the maximum return out of everything that they do. And to achieve that, they're wanting to take a lot of data on board and to really understand it. That, you know, you'll recognize someone with that Lord energy, probably that, you know, they might be more obviously introverted, and they'll probably say, yeah, I don't understand that, or I do understand that. You know, it's interesting that the one Lord who completed their return used a different email address. You know, it's almost like, I'm going to duck away from this, and that's because that individual doesn't have all the data at the moment. So it's like, if I don't have the data, I'm going to be circumspect about that. And I'll mentor that. I have another email address that I use when I'm unsure of things as well. So and then finally the mechanic. So where the Lord is the maximizer, the mechanic is the optimizer. They're the finisher. They're about honing things, tuning things. And actually, we're back into the realm of dynamo now, which is the realm of creativity. And mechanics are creative. They just create at the micro level, whereas creators tend to create at the macro level. Now, that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and there's some other bits I want to add to this, but I'd love to open it up now. I don't want this to be, you know, purely Stuart talking. So any questions or any observations or?
I have to say, I was very, when it came back as mechanic, I'm like, oh my God, terrible. Because but I see that it's also in that realm of dynamo, because creator would have been something I would have liked to have thought I was too. So it's interesting that they do touch and that that intuition is in there too. But it's, yeah. So I know, I think it's very interesting. And I think one of the biggest things that it says on the report for a mechanic is that that you tend to sort of take on projects that are already existing and then sort of fine tune them. And that when I think back at some of the stuff I've done, it's like, oh yeah, that's true. I've done that. So yeah, fascinating. I'd love to know. I'm looking forward to learning more.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you for that share. And does the kind of micro versus macro, it's not that you can't do the macro, because as you say, it's one of you, it's your secondary profile. But you know, is it more about just making those little adjustments, do you think, rather than changing things wholesale?
Well, I think, yeah, I don't know quite what to think about that. I'd like to learn a bit more about what that means, really.
Mm.
But I think the thing that about, as I say, that it's already existing, so you are tweaking something rather than sort of coming in with a whole new project and saying, right, let's do this. That resonates. So in that sense, you know, I'm not doing the macro of like, let's get this all going. I'm coming in when things are already kind of running and saying, hey, we could do this better, or, you know, let's tweak this and let's tweak this. So yeah, so some of these things are kind of new to me in a way, but then when I reflect on it, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, maybe that does make sense.
Brilliant. Well, thank you as again. Thanks for sharing. And as I say, I'm going to go a little woo on you now. We are none of these things. We're a being walking around in a human suit, but our human loves to understand how it can be in flow, and to understand also, you know, it can be helpful to understand the things that we do to potentially sabotage ourselves, which is another presentation for another time if anyone's ever interested to do that. So yeah, thank you. So yeah, these are not boxes. This is just about, Roger often describes it as the game we best play. And I'm going to use a soccer analogy because hopefully most people at least have a concept of soccer. But if you're a goalkeeper, if you're the one stopping people scoring the goals, you know, unless you're Peter Schmeichel, who used to take them a few years ago, maybe 20 years ago now, let's not have you taking the penalties and scoring the goals. You know, it's not they're not the same skills. So it's about recognizing that, okay, I'm a striker or a centre half or whatever it might be, or a goalkeeper, and then that's my strength, and I'm playing to those strengths. Because we can all do all of these. You know, I survived being an accountant in accumulator land. And actually, it's helpful to me now because there's times when even with my clients, where I just change hats and say, look, with your permission, can I go into the accountant now? You know, and this is what I would recommend from the accountant perspective, you know, which is, I guess, more kind of directive rather than coaching. Brilliant. Any other shares?
I can go.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Nora.
I'm in the same boat as Teresa. So hey, Teresa, solidarity. I'd also say that in the context of sustainability practitioners, mechanic is a really bad brand. I think there might be something to kind of giving some of these things other names.
Bless you for that, because I am
because I don't really connect with machines.
No. Well, thank you.
Go for it. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I think there's a delay. My apologies. Thank you for that. I'm in conversation about creating a sustainability dynamics model. It may take a year, but I'm in the zone of that, because I totally agree with you. It wouldn't and also if you the reason I use talent dynamics rather than the wealth dynamics one is, you know, most of the individuals who represent these profiles are really quite corporate-y and this kind of stuff, and I just knew it wouldn't resonate with this community. But Nora, thank you for that reminder. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the mechanics either love it or hate it. The Lords deny it, you know, no I'm not, and then you know they are, and so on and so forth. Supporters say, well, hang on, that's, you know, I'm out there leading a team, you know, so I hear you. They could all be tuned a bit. Great mechanic example there, Nora. Thank you. That's spot on. Anything else you wanted to share?
That's fine.
Anything else you wanted to share, Nora? How did it land with you?
Yeah, I think I also sent you an email about it because I felt a bit punchy after reading my profile in a nice way. And what definitely doesn't work for me at all is that it says that they are much more comfortable with measurable things like data and details than complicated things like people and the emotions. And I do both. I'm like 50-50, and I'm really comfortable with people as well. So I think, like, to me that sounds like an oversimplification that I don't agree with for myself. But as you said, you know, it's like we're not to be put in boxes. We're all human. It's all in a flow state. But that one I really didn't connect with. But then there are other things that I did connect with, like the slight drive towards perfection, and things like that. That really resonated well.
Oh, brilliant. Well, as I say, sometimes in the report, what they're trying to do is maybe juxtapose an accumulator versus a supporter, and so you're getting some generic strengths and weaknesses throughout the report. You know, my invitation is take what works for you. And Nora, I tell you what, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. So firstly, so I can see you all, and secondly, so I can go and have, if it's okay to go and look at your report. I won't show it, but just so I can.
Oh, of course. And I mean, already in the email, you said that I'm a kind of distributed very equally,
Well,
and
okay,
that's usually
what
personality tests for me. I am always like 25, 25, 25, 25.
And it's brilliant, and that's what I wanted to check, because I thought that was probably the case. And well, I tell you what, I'm just going to go back onto this because it's probably a good time to bring this into context. If you imagine now that you're looking down on this from above, can you see that it's actually a pyramid? And what I mentioned before is that there are actually 5 profiles rather than 4, or 5 elements. And the apex of that is it's the spirit of water, and the element that Roger chose for this is spirit, and it's pertinent for all of us. And what I often find with people whose profiles are rounded, 1 or 2 things, because I work quite a lot with kind of mumpreneurs and things like that. It's sometimes learned behavior from having to be everything to everyone as a mum. That's one of the things that comes through. But the other one is where people are very attuned to spirit. It's like, you know, from the space of spirit, I can do anything. And I don't know whether that resonates with you, Nora, as well, but that's been my experience with doing a lot of profiles with people. And this is one of the reasons why I love this model, because it starts with that apex. It's all about purpose. Spirit, it's the sense of purpose. It's the water element. And, you know, water, even within the Chinese medicine and Chinese elements model, is about flow anyway. It's the flow element of the 5. But it's also a great moderator and enhancer of the others. So, you know, the water can go down and help those new growths to spring out from dynamo. It can quench the fire of the blaze. You know, I'm conscious I'm probably talking too fast and too passionately, which is dynamo and blaze. So the water can be helpful there. So when you tap back into our why, it reminds us to, you know, I'm here to help raise the consciousness of the planet, essentially. 1 human at a time. And, you know, if I gabble on, how effective is that going to be? So by coming back into my sense of purpose, and you know, then we're into that beautiful nurturing energy. The water helps the crops to grow and the earth to flourish, you know, and we need water even to make steel. You know, it's that's how you make it. You forge it with water. So it's there as a support to all of the other profiles. And if you imagine that you start with the apex, if you start with why, and I don't know if any of you read any of Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, but it's been a really pertinent thing to me. you know, to understand my why and to understand my clients' why and other people's why. What's their purpose? What's in it? What's in it for them? What are they really about? And in this space of sustainability, you know, there's a lot of purpose in there. And then Dynamo, the question there is what? What's the big idea? What's it all about? What's my promise? What's, you know, what can people expect from me? You know, those kinds of things. Blaze is all about who. You know, who do I know that? Who, you know, who are my tribe? Who are the people that really I engage around? And actually, let's do. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Let's just do a little bit of interaction. I'd love it if everyone can share in this. So, if we imagine who as being the sense of the stakeholders, and I don't mean shareholders, they may be a stakeholder, but who are the stakeholders in either the places where you work or the businesses that you run? I'd love to just, you know, share some thoughts about who is this business for, or who is this, you know, who is this venture for? Groups of people. So we'll start with, if it was a limited company, the shareholders, just to give you an example. So who's the business for?
Can you say the question again? I didn't really understand.
Yeah, no, it's a tricky one. When I say about stakeholders, if we have a venture going of some sort, whether it's somewhere we work or somewhere that we, you know, it is our own business or our own consultancy or whatever, who is that business for? Who benefits from that business?
I can speak from the point of view of ASP, just because we're looking into this right now. We've come up with about 6 different stakeholders, including obviously the community members, but also you know, you've got nature and you know, the wider, yeah, so the wider stakeholders. So we've been trying to sort of think outside the box about, so those are just a couple of them, I can't remember the other ones from the top of my head, but so it's thinking about all the people that we're doing this for. Oh, future generations, we said, was a stakeholder as well. So things like that is, I think that's what we're talking about, Stuart.
I love this, because I love being in this space, because if I ask that, even of it doesn't have to be a corporate, you know, if I ask that of a group of small business owners or whatever, they go suppliers, customers, you know, staff, and all of those are true. They're all stakeholders in a venture, if you have those. But they forget things like the community, the wider community, the environment, society, and even their suppliers. You know, their suppliers come in late in the conversation. But the biggest eye opener, and I did this for a group of 18 people last Tuesday, and not a single one of them, it's the least I've ever had, not a single one of them came up with, how about if it served you and your family? You know, it's a yeah, that's what the who is about. It's a wider sense of that, you know. And thank you for that, Teresa, because that's just perfect. That's exactly the thing. When you widen it out, there's a lot more at stake here, using that word stakeholder. Brilliant. So then the questions for tempo is when and where. It's like, you know, where literally, where is this happening? Where am I doing this? But also, where am I in my journey? Where am I in the cycle? If it's a business, this is often the space of products and services, you know. And then where is the audience that will engage with my products and services? And where, if I have products and services, where are they in their life cycle? Because, you know, products have a life cycle like this. Products go from Blaze, you know, from Dynamo to Blaze to Tempo to Steel. So AI, for the sake of argument, is probably a Dynamo product or industry. You know, email is probably a steel product now in the same space. Social media is blaze or tempo. Can you see that things have a cycle that they naturally move through? And that's where mechanic can be really powerful, because you're on that cusp where you shift across for a new beginning, which can be a new venture, a new adventure, a new business, a new product. And then steel, the question there is how. How do we make this better? How do we get the most from this? How do we create ever greater impact for good?
Can you just say what tempo was again?
Well, tempo is when and where. Very grounded, very practical.
And could you say that dynamo is the why? I know you said you were talking about why, but I've written down what's it all about. You essentially mean the why.
Well, the why is the purpose. The what is kind of almost like what can you expect from us? What's the brand promise? What's the premise? What's it about? And what's the promise? What can you expect from us? It's slightly different from the purpose of why. But this is why, as I say, it's why I use this model, because for me, it allows you to see the best of yourselves and the things, that are less natural to you, and to see it in others so that you can communicate better. But there is also there's a cycle to everything in life like this. It's more natural. I don't know. We're going on holiday. Okay, why are we going on holiday? Because it's that time of year. And that's probably not a great purpose, but anyway. So what kind of holiday is it going to be? Well, let's have a beach holiday this time. Okay, who's coming? Just make it family. Okay. So when and where? Well, I don't know, Ibiza in September. And then you can plan how to do it. Do you see the cycle of that? And it works the same for businesses. When you can articulate your purpose and people understand what you do, then the people, the blaze, can start to coalesce around that. Whether that's clients, whether that's staff, whether that's suppliers, all the other stakeholders. All the stakeholders can coalesce around it then. Community, environment. And then you'll find fabulous products and services that you'll know when's the right time and where your audience is, if we're keeping this as a business analogy. And then you go out and plan how to do that and measure it, put systems in place, and then the beautiful mechanics optimize those systems for you so you're ready for another cycle. Any shares on that? No. If it's becoming overload, just say, Nora, yes.
I have a question. If we look at the yellow sensory timing tempo kind of thing, that am I just perceiving it as the people who are just generally good at business, or is that what this is also in reference to, or is that a too narrow view of what the yellow bits mean?
So let me go back to the model side. So just so I'm clear on what you're asking me. So this is the tempo at the bottom there, yeah?
Yeah, basically the yellow triangle, because for me, and I mean, this would work with me because that's where I didn't go.
Yeah. Well,
But it looks like those are the people that are really good with money, with business, with like the very kind of hardcore businessy kind of skills. Is that a too narrow reading of the yellow triangle, or is that actually a correct reading?
well, they're very good at the detail and managing the detail. But they won't have the ideas in the first place. So if we're talking about business, potentially these guys will never get to shine their light because the creator or somebody has not actually created the business in the first place. So you need the innovation. So thank you. It brings me on to another thing in here. So this model used to have a thing in the middle called VXL, but V is value and L is leverage. And we create value through the vertical, if you like. We create value in Dynamo by having the big idea, the intellectual property behind it, the brand. And we create value through the detailed products and services that go on in the tempo space. And also that beautiful customer service that goes on there. So that's how we create value in a business. So you're right. The second part of value is happening down in that yellow quadrant there, Nora. However, if we haven't had the idea in the first place, you know, these are not people who will naturally be starters and initiators of things.
Interesting. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for the question. I'll just, while I'm at it, I'll just finish the other side. So leverage. So Roger, I probably should have had a slide in here, but the value is more about, if you like, if you imagine a river going, it's always going to flow in one direction naturally. So value is all about almost like, if you like, the steepness of flow of that river. So, you know, having the idea in the first place and then really getting the detail, and, you know, tempo is the space for processes as opposed to procedures. Procedures happen in steel, but processes are really getting your processes in the best option. Then you can you know, you can steepen the flow. And leverage is about widening the flow. And Blaze is all about widening it through people, leveraging through people. So more clients, more team members, you know, greater awareness. And Steel is about leveraging it through structure and systems. So that you've got a stable business you can put more volume through and know that you're going to get the result you want at the end of it. And Roger talks about magnify and multiply there. But, you know, Blaze is all about magnifying, you know, getting more and more people aware of what's going on and coalescing and jumping on board with what you're up to. And Steel's about multiplying it, being, you know, knowing that the machine, if you want, is not going to crack when you're adding all this extra volume through it. That's probably a river analogy if I think about it, but the word levy keeps coming to mind for the steel. But does that help?
I'm wondering if there's, with steel, it's sounding like there's a sort of certain amount of certainty there, that you've achieved a certain amount of certainty, whereas in Dynamo, especially at the creator star level, you're well, I think I saw that in one of in the report, that you're dealing with creators sort of thrive with taking something that's already kind of fixed and making it I think you said something about chaos, and what was it, chaos and something. So it feels like by the time you've got round to steel, the sort of the processes and everything have got pretty certain. So you're
Exactly.
dealing with that sort of level of certainty. But by the time you're coming up to mechanic, the mechanic is sort of starting to question that, bring some creativity to that. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly that. What one or the other is either questioning that, how can I improve this, because they're the optimizers, or this is buzzing nicely. Now we're ready for the next big idea, which
Right.
you know,
The next step,
the mechanic can lean across into their creator secondary and have that idea, or they can support the creator in the organization to do that. Thanks again for the questions. So again, remembering that these are not boxes. There's an interesting model in here, which is called 1, 2, 3. Because we've got these diagonal quadrants, you can cover all of the 4 energies with just 3 people. And so if we're in a relatively small business, or, you know, in a team or whatever, we can always support ourselves by starting with our profile, that's 1, and then going 2 clockwise, and then 3 clockwise. So if I go with creator, a creator is looking for a supporter, you know, and the first 2 people in Microsoft were Bill Gates and I can't remember his name. A creator profile and a supporter profile. They possibly, whatever we might think about the organization, they might never have got outside of their garage, because they were one of those garage businesses that literally started in the garage, without that supporter energy. Because Bill's having a million ideas and not being able to ground them. And this is why I was on a training this morning, which was just a beautiful training, because she was blending this with Chinese medicine. And the whole thing of Chinese medicine is the organs in the body are kind of related to the 5 elements on here. And we need all of them to be functioning for the body to be functioning effectively. And so in any venture, we really need all of these to be happening. So that I think is the other answer to you, Nora, is yes, those people are great at the grounded practical stuff of it. But if we haven't got the ideas and we haven't got the people, and ultimately if we haven't got the structures to make it replicable, then the body as a whole is not optimal. Sarah, did you want to share something? Yeah.
I'm thinking a lot about I don't know if you've come across the Kinefin model.
Yeah.
It's written Sinefin, but it's a Welsh word pronounced Kinefin. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but anyway. And he talks about there being 4 areas. There are sort of all the way through from a kind of a stable, you know, stability in life as normal. I'm going to give you the wrong names, but it'll give you the gist. To complicated problems, through to complex problems and chaos. And the reason I found that really interesting in this space was that so often in sustainability, people are working with not actually complicated problems that an expert can solve, but complex or even chaos, because they're creating something, you know, the business as usual is the problem that's got us here. We can't just keep doing it this way. We're creating something new and emergent and something from scratch, and it often hasn't been done before. And I'm just sort of thinking about overlaying this onto that almost, which people really, which situations really bring out the best in these different profiles. And I can imagine that the sort of the steel side of things, it'll be more you know, when it's business as usual or an expert solving it, and that potentially complexity and chaos requires the sort of this sort of size. Or you probably can't see where my mouse is, can you? But the dynamic. So that's off the top of my head. I'd be curious to know what you think.
No, firstly, I love that. Thank you. And as soon as you mentioned it, I'll go, ooh, I wonder how it maps to this. But yeah, I mean, I would imagine that the chaos is kind of mapping to the dynamo. You know, it's and if we want to take the individual profiles, the mechanic is probably making sense of the chaos to some extent. The creator is just creating anew from that space of fluidity and volatility, and the star will be looking to how they can translate that to the people. You know, it's what is this about? And then okay, so because I want to tell all these people here about it. So yeah, I don't. What were the other 3? Oh, sorry, you're muted, I think.
I can't remember what it's called when it's business as usual. Sort of
Well, that to me sounds as though it's probably the tempo one, you know, it's like, you know, there's a reliability going on there, which might seem strange because we've got steel after that, but it's like, that's where you put your house in order. And then the steel people, it's almost like I use this another analogy, sorry to go on this another analogy, but it's like you start with purpose at the middle, then you've got your principles. So the dynamo is about your principles, you know, big idea. What's the big idea? Blaze is about either policy or people. You know, is what are the people? What are the policies that the people can follow? Tempo is about the processes. It's like, you know, if this comes before that, it's more effective. You know, because processes are about doing the right things in the right order. Yeah. And then the steel is about the procedures. You know, how can we do this repetitively, time after time, so that we get the same results that we're expecting? And so that's doing things right, if you see the distinction. And I don't know if that helped with that. So, but it's so I think what you're saying there is so the business as usual possibly is the tempo, but I wasn't quite sure what the other two were. It's going to be tempo or steel if it does map. If it does map.
It's so interesting because what I see often is companies that are trying to build more sustainability, and they'll often be working at I think the tempo and steel sort of areas, and the dynamo and the blaze might be missing at the very senior level. And
Yeah.
so therefore you get much more transactional rather than transformational. And the more an organization can push it up so that it's more at the dynamo, the ideas, the blaze, bring it to the people, the excitement, then you get more transformational. But so much of what we're doing, or because we're frightened or we're feeling a bit disempowered in this space, is we'll sort of hunker down on those other two, which are really important and needed, but perhaps not first, just as you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
And you said something earlier about, did you say the star translates for the people? Or you said something that really resonated with me. I was like, oh God, yes, I am a star then.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the deal maker will communicate, if you like. So they're about the connection with people and service almost. The reason I say the star is a translator, because what stars at their best are looking to do is get the big idea, understand the big idea, the dynamo, and then get people on board with it. So that sense of translator. Yeah, Teresa.
I was waving goodbye to Simon.
Oh, sorry, sorry, I can't see everyone. Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, I've just to say, I think that's really fascinating what you're saying, Sarah, about the different levels of complication, you know, the complicated, complex, chaos, and the stable. That definitely does seem to map here.
Thank you. And I'd love to know more about that, because, as I say, I would love to help social entrepreneurs, as I describe it. So people who are looking to do good in the world through some enterprise or some venture, be more impactful. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. So there's a realization also, Sarah, from what you were sharing, that actually there may be a lot more tempo in this space, in the sustainability world, than, you know, because I'm used to working in the enterprise world and previously in the corporate world. So how can we bring leadership to those people, those of us that do have more dynamo and blaze?
Totally. And I think sort of perfectionism or fear of judgment can mean people do hunker down into what's more secure and stable, rather than doing the let's innovate, let's try, let's take a risk, let's sense and sort of find our way. And it means that we're playing smaller than we might in this space. Organizations.
Thank you. And then, of course, you know, we've all got, going back to that Carl Jung quote, we've all got our shadow at play as well. You know, I describe it as the beautiful dance of our humanness. You know, it's duality going on, and if you take the concept that we are beings having a human experience, then we can see the beauty in it, as painful as it often is, you know, to be in that space. So, you know, and there is even that kind of yin yang thing going on in the model. You know, dynamo predominance are craving significance. You know, blaze people are craving variety, and so on and so on and so on. So it's like, and I, as I say, I tend to use this as a tool for people in their fire, in their flow, in the best of themselves, and then I use other tools or my own personal observation with my clients to see what's going on in the shadow side. Because going back to Karl Jung, when we make the unconscious conscious, when we actually see what's going on in our shadow, then we have choice. At least we have choice about what we do with it.
Could you say a bit more about that, about each of those areas? What's the you weren't saying the shadow, but you said what do they crave? So I'd love to hear, as you went round, to say they're craving this, they're craving that, they're craving that.
Yeah. So from this space, we're only looking at the four, because when we're in spirit, you know. So it's you know, we're more connected at that point. So the dynamo, it's all about significance, and that can be helpful, because if you want to engage someone in dynamo, play to their sense of significance. You know, I mean, in a loving way, not in a judgmental way, but actually, if you know they're the person that you really need in this moment, you know, maybe big them up a bit, you know, or love that idea, you know, from a space of love and service. Yeah, it's got to be the right person. And Blaze is all about variety, and particularly of people. But we get bored easily. So do dynamo. You know, stars are the worst. It's like we're the ultimate squirrel, if you've ever seen that film. It's, you know, it's like, bored already, move on. In the worst of ourselves. And so in tempo, it's craving, it's almost like craving certainty. That's why I think that's the place of, you know, it's like belonging, actually, probably more. It's a sense of belonging, you know. It's and the still is more about the certainty, but more about, you know, just they're craving, at their worst, control. It's all about control still, controlling others, controlling their own environment, by which I mean you can often go very much into your heads and try to think the way out of an issue, you know, that sense of control. Was that helpful?
Raised a lot of other questions as well.
Yes, almost inevitably. All right, I'm just conscious of the time, so I just got one more slide that I wanted to share. Oh, so share the thing, Stuart, and then down arrow. Yeah. So I just wanted to share this slide because, not that one, that one. This is the concept of your secondary profiles, and this is the way that I often, it worked for me when someone described it like this. So your primary one is the fuselage of a plane, and when a plane is flying straight and true, that's when it's at its most effective, its most efficient. But there's times when it needs to change direction, there's times when it needs to come into land, and then it can bank across into one wing or the other. And that's what your secondaries will do for you. They are the ones either side of you in the model. So creator is mechanic supporter, star is creator. Actually, that's wrong. Oh, brilliant. That actually should be mechanic, creator and star rather than supporter. My apologies. Yeah. So the creator can lean into their mechanic. They can go into the more structured sense and go into the micro creativity. What would improve the situation? How can I change this for the better? But then come back into their creator where they're thinking big picture, and then they can bank over into their star, as it should be, my apologies, and say, well, okay, now I've had this great idea, let's just see how it lands with some people. Let's just chat about it for a while and see what they think. You know, let's prove the concept by leaning into star and then coming back to the core of the center again, because what happens to an aeroplane if it's banked over on one side? Yeah, at best it goes round and round, at worst it crashes. Yes, thanks, Sarah. So, you know, and so this was a powerful analogy to me, and I don't, hopefully it's landed with you guys as well. This is what we mean by playing the game you best play, because you can play all of them, and ultimately you're not even any of these. You're a divine spirit. However, in your humanness, if the profile is creator, and I say if because my invitation to you is, if you want to have an hour's chat with me, to just tune into all of that one-to-one, please, you've given of your time here. I'd love to help you with that. Play that game, but know that you can, in this analogy, do a bit of the mechanic, and you can do a bit of the supporter. So Teresa and Nora, from your mechanic, that would be creator on one wing and Lord on the other. So there'll be some times from that mechanic space where you need to go really quite steely and get the data and analyze the data, but then come back into the mechanic, and how are you going to use that to improve things? And then the other way, you can lean into your creator and get some big picture thinking for a while. Yeah, and maybe, you know, that's where you go for your creativity for a presentation, so that you get the slides together infinitely better than Stuart has done. Sarah.
So if I'm star, supporter, creator, or star,
yeah, you're a star in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you'd have creator on one hand and supporter on the other.
Right, and that would mean that I'm primarily about the people, but I can go into. I'm struggling to understand how then I'd slot in the other
So
two.
I'll do it for everyone here, if you wish. So for a star, your thing is about being the bridge between the idea and the people, between the dynamo and the blaze. Yeah, being that bridge, being that translator.
Mm.
And the path there is about being inspiring, to draw people to you. It's about personal attraction. That's when stars are really in their flow, that they're attractive. And you can lean over into your supporter profile and be more about the people. So you might need to do that in a team with your team, to play that role as the leader of a team. Or you might do that to move from marketing to sales, because in the star thing, you've kind of inspired people, you've done the marketing, you've attracted them to you, but now you need to have a conversation about, actually, do they want to work with you? So that would be leaning into your supporter. And going the other way into creator, it's like, okay, do I really understand this thing that I'm promoting? Let's just spend a bit of time over here, and, you know, is there a better way of doing this even? I know that's a bit mechanicky, but it's like, okay, what really is going on here, and how can I best promote it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the same, I don't know who else is on the call with other profiles. Julia still there?
Me or yeah, I'm a creator, so I think my wings are already there.
You're a creator. Oh yeah.
Yeah. But no, I find that quite interesting. When I was looking through the report, I thought that was quite, learning a bit more about that was quite useful, I think.
And as I say, we can do all of it. I managed probably 10 years in junior roles, because I trained as an articled clerk, as they used to call it as well. Yes, I'm that old that I actually worked on handwritten ledgers, would you believe, on my first client. Um, and all of that detail and stuff, you know, I can now do detail, but it's purely learned behavior. And my sense of timing is like, you know, and what instead of going to my VA and saying, do me a beautiful, pretty presentation, Stuart's playing with that, you know, an hour before the presentation. That's the kind of things that they're the games that we play. And it's, you know, that's just, I guess, enjoying the human moment of that and then saying, okay, what would I really love? I'd love to serve you guys beautifully. So let's just get, you know, get this finished. So I'm complete unless there's any more questions or any more observations.
No, really interesting. I'm sorry, I keep looking down because my profile's on my,
No,
that's what I'm looking like I'm not listening, but I am. Found that really interesting. I would like to chat more. But it's getting my mind ticking. So thank you so much.
I know, you're welcome, man. And one second, Nora, I just respond to that. As I say, Julia, you know, obviously Gwen's not here, but anything I can do to help ASP through the auspices of this, you know, I would love to do that. I haven't mentioned my particular flavor of nature is water. This was the Soul of Water retreat that we were running here. And, you know, we are using our oceans and everything else as toilets, basically. There are indigenous tribes you think, really, you do that in your water? So, you know, I would love to help, you know, in that space as well. Sorry, Nora.
Oh, no worries. Thank you so much for the presentation. I think it sounds like everyone got a lot out of it and just like ruminating over the things that they learned. I have a general question because you were mentioning already being interested in working more with the Association of Sustainability Practitioners, but also earlier when you were saying, yeah, maybe you are considering a rebrand in a year or so to make the whole system a little bit more sustainability attractive. And yeah, my question would be, what are the trends that you are seeing, or whether there's anything specific in the sustainability community that is different from the other communities and organizations you work with? And maybe there's not, but I'm just very curious about that.
Oh, well, thank you. Firstly, if I could create a version of that tomorrow, I would do. It's just that I know the wheels of the organization can grind relatively slow. That said, they're on a mission to, you know, as I say, they already have nearly 3 million members. They're looking to get to 10 million by the end of 2025. So, you know, if that's one of the ways that they will be more appealing to other people, then I'll certainly have that conversation with them. To answer your second question, I'm relatively new to this. This was part of my awakening that actually previously I was working with people in the mind body spirit space, a lot of mumpreneurs. You know, I found it amazing that this grizzled old ex-accountant was attracting women. I mean, it was, and I was, what's going on here? So I asked, you know, and it's about holding space for them, allowing them to be heard, etc., etc., etc. So, you know, I may well still attract those people as we go, but what I realized I was missing was the nature element of those triangles. You know, the Venn diagram I did at the beginning. You know, I was talking spirit. I was in the space of spirit and personal development, etc., etc., with my client base, and I still think business has the capacity to change the world for good. But I was missing the acknowledgement of the water and the environment generally. So once I started kind of being an advocate for SDG 14, the Life Below Water one, because it's that flavor of water, as important as drinking water and sanitation is, it's for me it's SDG 14. That's when I started getting into this space, and serendipities open up. So Lord Gant. Do you know Lord? Oh, she introduced me to
Oh, actually, of course we do. Yeah. Sorry.
Lord. And that was around water and what she's doing, you know, up in British Columbia, so Vancouver Island. So, and this was the connection to Gwyn, and it resonated and all the rest of it. So I can't really answer your question per se. What's going on in the world? AI has just leapt upon us, really. You know, in the world of commerce and business, everything's about AI. And what I will share with you, one of the reasons why I stepped up to be the city leader for Genius U in London, and to be honest, the whole of the UK at the moment, there's only me in the UK at the moment, is because Roger's mission is to lift the consciousness of the planet, such that we have, I won't say an antidote to AI, but we can teach and train AI the world we would love to see. And so that really resonated with me. And as more people awaken to what's going on, you know, the more opportunity that there is that we will take actions that will mean that AI is not the threat that it potentially could be. You know, let's not beat around the bush. We are almost at singularity, where we will not be the most intelligent thing on the planet. And if they then get mobile, now we're really in the realms of chaos. But I don't believe that, and this is why I've engaged around this message that the best of humanity, we can teach AI the best of humanity. So there's one there's one thing that's going on in the rest of the world, and sadly, I'm not seeing anywhere near as much as I would like of businesses being conscious in every sense of that word. And that, again, that's what I'm looking to be out there doing, is for them to help them be more conscious in what they're doing with their people, with the planet, with everything else. There is a shift away from profit as a bad thing, and a shift away from profit as the ultimate end result. You know, so we are getting more triple bottom line from my observation. People genuinely are looking at it. And then the other shift is from not for profit mentality into a for profit mentality, because profit is just cash, which is just a medium. You know, it's a mechanism for flow, and that message, I think, I'm observing that landing more with people. Profit stroke money is just choice. It's just choice. And then what will we choose to do with that? I'd love to help more people be out there doing things for our planet.
As you're talking, Stuart, it just makes me realize that there's a because I would definitely be interested in having a chat with you and Gwyn around what you could offer for ASP, you know, and how we could layer this on and maybe work with the directors and the wider community a bit. But I was going to say, darn it, I went off on a tangent there. Oh yes, how have you ever done any work about how the different types work together?
Yeah, so talent dynamics is actually the team version. Wealth dynamics tends to be the more entrepreneur type version of it. There are what they call performance coaches out there. I'm a flow consultant, they're performance consultants or performance coaches, and they tend to look more at teams and how you optimize teams.
Right.
However, for relatively small teams, I've done team workshops and team dynamics because we just average out the profiles and things. So that's, you know, most of my clients to date have been small businesses, so I might have done it for them and a couple of even virtual staff or whatever. But I've done it for teams of kind of up to as big as 15 or something of that nature. But I'm not the enterprise level going to to a
Yeah.
charity or a corporate and do it for teams of hundreds.
Mhm. But there's a whole thinking around the optimum way of each of these quadrants working together, presumably.
Yeah, absolutely. And firstly, for me, it's the flow, it's the cycle. That's the key to it. Have the idea before getting people involved, and then ground it out, and then put structure in place. It's that. And often what happens with the team ones is you notice gaps. So I'll give you an example. I work with an IFA practice, financial planning practice, and probably unsurprisingly, they were mainly tempo and steel people, including the owner, who was a lord. But he wanted to grow and couldn't understand why. Well, the reason why is there's no blaze stuff and there's no new ideas, So, but for him, the solution was, I just went out networking. Is a very good friend of mine as well. I just went out networking for him and found a couple of accountancy practices and a couple of lawyers to refer into him. That's all it needed. But that's where the teams thing can be helpful. You see where the gaps are.
Yeah, that's really useful.
Right, I'm conscious of the time. I'd love to leave you with just a little story, if I may. We may be a minute over because it's just a rallying cry. And I know I've thrown the AI bomb into the mix of this, but partly how I engaged with this in 2007, I was in the Theatre Royal in Drury Lane in London with whatever it is, 2,000 other mainly entrepreneurs, at an event with Bob Proctor, if any of you know Bob, John D. Martini, a fabulous woman called Gertrude Matche, and Roger Hamilton, who created Genius U. And at the end of it, they asked us all to hold hands or link arms, so we were literally all connected around the room. And then they put up this presentation on, and it was like 9/11 and start of the banking crisis and the war against terror and all these hideous images and stuff that was going on then. And then they started bringing up other images which were related to the Millennium Goals, the original UN 2000 to 2015 goals, which we're halfway through. This is July 2007. And every single one of those goals was being beaten, despite all of that chaos going on, largely by individuals and small enterprises. And here we are, a fraction beyond halfway through the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'd hazard a guess, if we looked at it, the same would apply, despite, all the climate anxiety, despite the wars that are going on at the moment, despite AI. I'd hazard a guess that we are still ahead of those Sustainable Development Goals. And that's the mission that I'm on. And, I think it's the mission that you guys and ASP is on as well. And that's why it's just so synergist with me. So thank you very much for your time. That's me complete.
Thank you.
Stuart.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Fantastic.
you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Really good, really interesting.
And
Thank you so much,
if
Stuart.
you'd like a further conversation, just get in touch.
Yeah.
All right, brilliant.
Thank you.
Oh, well.
Good to see everyone.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Have a great rest of your weeks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.